What's happening, guys? I think it's about time I did a breakdown and prediction for this upcoming middleweight title fight between Gennady Golovkin and Daniel Jacobs. Now, I've made tons of videos about this fight going back to I think April. April was the first time I talked about this fight, where I did my video talking about why I felt that Danny Jacobs was Gennady Golovkin's biggest threat, and why I still feel that he's Gennady Golovkin's biggest threat at 160. And yeah, I've done so many videos about this fight. I've talked in so many different videos about possible different outcomes and what threats both guys pose to the other. And it got to the point where I wasn't even sure if I should even bother making this video. But because the fight's official and because it's coming up in a couple of months, I think that it makes sense to do an actual prediction video. Now, you never know. Closer to the fight, my mind might change, and I might make another video, just like a final prediction, maybe a week of the fight video, something like that. But this is a fight that, like I said, it's been on my mind for a long time, and there's just so much to talk about here. There's so many variables to this fight, and so many things that could impact the fight. Now, first of all, you guys know how I do things. A lot of you guys pointed this out in my Sergey Kovalev Andre Ward prediction. For the longest time, I was talking about that fight. A lot of people seem to think I was kind of cynical about the whole thing. And but it has to be said, okay, because it's part of boxing, and it's increasingly as boxing evolves, it's going to become more and more part of boxing. So it has to be talked about when it's relevant, and that's the politics of this fight. Do not get it twisted, guys, okay? Every single little variable in regards to politics going into this fight all favour Danny Jacobs. Every single thing. And I know some of you are going to say, oh, Triple G's the champion, Triple G's the bigger draw. That doesn't mean shit here. It doesn't. Guys, this fight's taking place in Danny Jacobs' hometown, okay? In Danny Jacobs' home country as well, and his hometown. All the judges for this fight are going to be American. The referee's going to be American. Al Heyman is financially backing Danny Jacobs. The WBA seem to be, they seem to have some kind of agenda against Triple G. I mean, with not sanctioning the belt for the Kell Brook fight, even though all the other sanctioning bodies did. Just everybody involved. You've got Virgil Hunter on board. You've got Andre Ward, who's now helping Danny Jacobs prepare. You've got Chris Algieri too, who stepped in, and he's going to be helping Danny Jacobs with his nutrition and his detoxification and whatnot. So, guys, just every little thing. I mean, the fight's, like I said, it's in Danny's hometown. The judges are going to be cheering for him. The majority of the crowd's probably going to be on his side. Just every little variable when you consider politics. I mean, just think about it, right? If this fight was taking place in Karaganda, Kazakhstan, with three Kazakhstan judges and a Kazakhstan referee, I mean, what would you guys say about that? You would say, oh, he's got no chance of winning because it will be corrupt. They'll all be on Triple G's side. So, let's be consistent when the fight's taking place in America. Okay, America isn't special. Okay, it isn't this special place where corruption doesn't exist. It does exist. Okay, and when you've got a fighter who's fighting in his hometown with judges that are of his nationality and a referee of his nationality, and the fight's being put on by promoters of his nationality, okay, Al Heyman's going to be very much involved in this fight. So, it's on an American network and everything. So, guys, politically, everything here favours Jacobs, and anybody that even suggests otherwise, I just don't understand how you can even say that, okay? Danny Jacobs is going to be well supported in this fight. Everything's going to favour him. He's going to be able to train where he's comfortable. The fight's not far from where he lives. He's from New York City, so or as far as I know, he is. Yeah, everything politically suits him. So with that out of the way, because like I said, it had to be talked about before anything else because it's very significant. Let's talk about styles. Now, as I said, I've talked about this fight over and over again in many different videos. and I've broken down the styles of these two fighters and how I feel each guy matches up with the other. Danny Jacobs. Now, one thing that a lot of people have been bringing up is the Pirog fight. Dmitry Pirog put Danny Jacobs to sleep about 6 years ago. I think that was in 2010, something like that. And I've watched that fight loads of times on YouTube because trying to gauge how good a fighter Pirog was in comparison to Triple G. And during that fight, Dmitry Pirog, he really threw Danny Jacobs off his game by shifting. Like, he would come forward and cut off the ring, and he would just slip Danny Jacobs' punches just enough for him to counter with his own. And, there were little movements that he'd do. He'd feint, he'd cut off the ring, he'd switch to southpaw for a split second, then he'd switch straight back to orthodox and throw his right hand. And the knockout in the 5th round, it was just set up beautifully, okay? The right hand, Danny Jacobs just didn't see it coming, Pirog got him right up against the ropes, right where he wanted him. Shifted, feinted, got into position, and just slipped that right hand straight through the middle. It was like a sniper, bang on, right on the chin down the middle, and it knocked Danny Jacobs into next week. And Danny Jacobs, it was a brutal knockout, and I can see why you'd look at that and think that, if this guy gets hit with Triple G, he's gonna get knocked out. But guys, the one thing that's on my mind in regards to that is, I have heard that argument about so many different fights over the years. How many times did we hear that about Vladimir Klitschko? Vladimir Klitschko got knocked out by Corey Sanders and Lamont Brewster. And then for so many years after, you had all these heavyweights talking about, oh, I hit way harder than him. If I hit him on the chin, he's going to sleep. I mean, look at Sam Peter, for example. He talked about being able to knock Vladimir out because those guys did, and he never knocked him out. He got destroyed twice. Well, first fight he scored a few knockdowns, but you get what I'm saying. He got absolutely dominated, putting those knockdowns aside, which were actually rabbit punches. And but yeah, he talked about he would be able to knock Vladimir out because Corey Sanders and Lamont Brewster did. Same with David Haye. I mean, David Haye spent years and years, he wouldn't shut up about it, talking about, if Corey Sanders, who was an out of shape, part-time boxer, was able to knock Vladimir out, what do you think I'm going to do to him when I land on his chin? So, I heard that, analysis so many times in regards to Vladimir throughout the years, and I also heard it about several other guys too, like Tyson Fury, for example. Before fighting Klitschko, Tyson Fury had been dropped by Steve Cunningham. He was also dropped by Nevin Pajcik, and those guys were not considered heavy punchers. Pajcik only had about 5 knockouts, and Steve Cunningham was a cruiserweight, so neither of those guys were considered top-level heavyweight punchers. And I had people telling me that Tyson Fury was going to get completely blown away by Klitschko based on that, saying that he has no chin. But what you have to understand about that is fighters change. If a fighter gets hit and knocked down, it could be a number of things. Perhaps he had an off night. Perhaps he just fought the wrong strategy and got caught with a shot he didn't see coming. Because knockout punches, they come when you least expect it. If you're fighting a guy that doesn't have a reputation of being hit hard, sometimes you're not expecting to get hit hard. So then when you get hit with a shot that comes from a weird angle, or you just didn't see it coming, or you're off balance, or you're not in the best of condition, it can really surprise you, and it can be surprising power. So yeah, I don't usually look at a guy getting knocked out and then immediately think, oh, he doesn't have a good chin. Now, another thing that people are bringing up is the first Sergio Mora fight, where Sergio Mora was able to knock Danny Jacobs down. But honestly, I think that's an irrelevant argument, and the reason why is Danny Jacobs had just knocked Sergio Mora down. He then went in with no guard, no defense, square feet, looking to go for the knockout, and just swung for the fences, and then walked straight into a counter left and touched down. Okay, guys, that was nothing to do with Danny Jacobs having a weak chin. He just got caught off balance. Okay, he got caught on the attack when he thought he had his opponent out, and that was what happened. Yeah, so Danny Jacobs, I don't think you can look at those instances and say that he has a bad chin, especially when there's rumours of him having extreme health problems going into the Pirog fight, and of course we found out he had a rare, what was it? Was it a rare bone cancer that he had, something like that? And he really wasn't well. He was out of the ring for a while afterwards, and yeah, Danny Jacobs. I've watched a lot of his recent fights. For example, I watched his fight against Jared Fletcher. And Jared Fletcher, don't be put off by his early stoppage loss against Saunders, because that was a premature stoppage. You know how the UK is with premature stoppages; it happens all the time. So yeah, Danny Jacobs, I thought he looked fantastic in that fight. I mean, he was boxing well, moving around. Jared Fletcher could not touch him with anything, and Jared Fletcher's a pretty slick, pretty good mover. He's got good skills and good speed, and he just couldn't catch Danny Jacobs with anything. Danny Jacobs' timing seemed really on point that night. His conditioning was really good, and his power, his combination punches, and his ability to throw to the body. Danny Jacobs is a very, very good combination puncher, and he really throws in those hooks to the body very well. And I think he's a very underrated fighter. I really do. I think Danny Jacobs is a lot better than a lot of my subscribers think he is. Um, he seems to move pretty well. He's got good hand speed. He's got very good stamina. That's another thing about Danny Jacobs. He can really fight at a fast pace, and he can keep that pace up, and he can carry his power later into fights. That's another thing that I've noticed. Now, the Sergio Mora rematch, he slaughtered Sergio Mora in that rematch, and a lot of people thought that because the first fight he was down, that in the rematch, they obviously they thought he would win, but they didn't think he'd be impressive. But I thought he was all right. I mean, Sergio Mora is a cagey, awkward veteran fighter who's not easy to look good against. And I mean, Sergio Mora was able to defeat Gregoris Proxer, and that surprised a lot of people. Gregoris Proxer was a decent, highly critically acclaimed contender. And Sergio Mora, even past his prime, was able to completely outbox him. So, Sergio Mora's not he's not a great fighter. He's certainly past his prime, but like I said, he's a bit of a spoiler. He's a guy that's not good, not easy to look good against. So, I don't really expect Jacobs to look fantastic in the fight. I mean, he looked as good as he could do. He got the stoppage again, so I don't really criticize that performance. Now, Danny Jacobs to me, he's one of these fighters who he's just so dangerous. Everything about him just oozes danger. He's tall. He's got a significant height and reach advantage here. He knows how to box on the outside behind a jab. He'll drop his hands at times because he relies on reflexes. He'll often switch his stance. And he seems quite well coordinated as a southpaw when he switches. Obviously, he's a natural orthodox. At least I think he is. When I watch him, he looks right-handed to me. But when he switches to southpaw, he seems to paw with the right jab and then throw a straight left, sometimes to the body, and he's quite accurate with it. So he's a very versatile fighter in the ring, Jacobs. He's very strong, hits very hard, and Triple G ain't gonna have it all his own way. Now, what I think Triple G needs to do in this fight, in fact, I'm fairly certain this is what he needs to do. He needs to apply tons of pressure in this fight. He's gonna want to really put the pressure on Jacobs, because Triple G, the last thing Triple G wants is for this fight to go the distance. He has to get Danny Jacobs out of there. Being in Danny Jacobs' hometown with American judges and whatnot, he needs a knockout. And the key to getting the knockout, he's going to have to shift the way that Pirog did. However, I think that Golovkin, at this stage of Jacobs' career, he's a lot more well conditioned. So I think that Golovkin's going to have to throw a lot of body punches. The body is the key here. Golovkin needs to fight pretty much exactly the way he fought against Ishida, where he's slipping, Ishida's on the outside trying to box him behind a jab, and Golovkin's shifting and just slipping the punches just enough to counter and getting him up against the ropes. That's what Golovkin needs to do here. He needs to stalk Jacobs, needs to move his head. He can't give up free shots like he did against Brook. If he does that in this fight, he's getting knocked out. He has to be defensive. He has to get that guard up so that while he's moving forward and moving his head, he's also blocking punches. And he needs to try and set up some body shots. He needs to get in there, throw that left hook to the body, which is one of Triple G's most effective punches when he used it. Just ask Brook, just ask Matthew Macklin too. That left hook to the body that Triple G throws is absolutely devastating. and against a taller, longer, more rangy, and very athletic opponent in Jacobs, Golovkin is going to need to use that left hook to bring Jacobs' hands down more often and to really take the sting out of Jacobs' punches so that then Golovkin can come forward and take more risks midway through the fight. One thing I don't see happening here, I don't see Danny Jacobs ending up in a situation like Dominic Wade did. So I don't see Danny Jacobs just getting overwhelmed so quickly with the power. See, Dominic Wade, he was a tall guy and a decent athlete, but the problem was he just didn't have any power. Triple G just did not respect Dominic Wade's power at all. He just came forward and he didn't give a fuck. Triple G didn't give a fuck about Dominic Wade's power. It was nothing. He was eating his punches like candy and laughing at him. So I mean, Kell Brook was a bigger puncher than Dominic Wade. So was most of Triple G's opponents. That was Dominic Wade's problem, and that's why Dominic Wade will probably never be a champion because he just don't have the power to be an elite middleweight. And but I don't see that happening to Jacobs because Jacobs is far more compact, far more strong and physical, and hits much harder. So he's not going to be intimidated by Golovkin. This is why I don't see this being an early stoppage. I see this fight going to at least the 7th or 8th round. I don't see it being if Triple G is going to win this fight, it's going to be a late stoppage, in my opinion. I don't see him getting Danny Jacobs out early. That's just my opinion. Danny Jacobs also working with Virgil Hunter and Andre Ward. He's going to be working on a lot of veteran tactics. He's probably going to try leaning and holding. I don't think that'll help him. Honestly, though, I think Triple G's too smart for that. Triple G, he's dealt with that before. A lot of fighters have tried to hold on to him, and he just pushes them off with his head and then knocks him the fuck out. So I don't think that'll work for him. But if Danny Jacobs decides to throw low blows and use his head and his elbows and then hold, or hit during breaks and stuff like that, just little sneaky things, sneaky veteran tactics, that could help him here. And we know Triple G ain't about all that. He's an honourable fighter that doesn't use those kind of tactics, or at least doesn't use them consistently. I'm not saying that he doesn't rabbit punch from time to time. Most, if not all, fighters do. But Triple G's not consistent in illegal tactics. He's a guy who genuinely fights within the rules to the best of his ability. So yeah, Triple G, he needs to come for the jab's important too. I think the jab and then move in after throwing the jab. Throw the jab and then kind of slip to the left and try and avoid a counter. Because the jab gives Jacobs something to think about. And then Jacobs will be worrying about whatever's coming at him, and all that time Triple G's measuring him up and looking to land a bomb. And that's what Triple G needs to do. Just exactly what he did against Ishida. Obviously, it ain't going to be as over that quick because Ishida didn't, like Dominic Wade, Ishida didn't have the punching power to keep Triple G off him. Danny Jacobs does. So Danny Jacobs, he's going to be in there a lot longer than Ishida. But I still think if Triple G applies the right amount of pressure, and if Triple G pushes him back, gets forward, shifts, gets him into position, Triple G can knock Danny Jacobs out. He can do it. What Danny Jacobs needs to do is he needs to maintain distance. He needs to establish his jab. And but it's a double-edged sword here, because what Danny Jacobs doesn't want to do is he doesn't want to run. Okay, if he runs, he'll end up like Willie Monroe Jr. Okay, he'll end up just getting smashed. He doesn't want to run. Triple G's a hunter. Triple G will just have him burning out by running around, and his legs will get weak, and eventually Triple G will just break him. So he's gonna want to, when he needs to. I'm not saying don't box on the outside. That's obviously you got to establish distance, but when he needs to, he has to be prepared to stand his ground and duke it out. He's gonna have to throw some uppercuts. Land those hooks to the body when Triple G's coming forward, so you take the sting out of Triple G's shots too, so that Triple G's more, there's an incentive for Triple G to step back and stay outside. So then obviously the reach advantage of Danny Jacobs will come into play, and Danny Jacobs, he can knock Triple G out. He's got the power. If Triple G falls short with a punch, Danny Jacobs has the length and the power to capitalize on it and get the knockout. Now, some of you are going to say, oh, well, Curtis Stevens and David Lemieux were big punchers, and arguably some would say they're bigger punchers than Jacobs. I don't agree, but some would say they are. And they weren't able to hurt Triple G or knock him down or anything. But the problem with those guys is those guys were shorter than Triple G and had shorter arms. So even at the times where Triple G would fall short, he could just take a step back, and those guys didn't have the length or the arm length to really catch him, or the footwork, to be honest. I mean, David Lemieux had pretty poor footwork, pretty poor balance. So, he wasn't able to capitalize on any mistakes that Triple G made. But Danny Jacobs has the natural athletic gifts and advantages to take advantage when Triple G does get careless and make mistakes. And if Triple G does get hit, we know that he sometimes has the tendency to show a bit of machismo and be like, yeah, is that all you got? Hit me again. And if he does that in this fight, bad idea. Bad idea. Let's just put it like that. It's a bad idea if he does it in this fight. Guys, it's difficult to make a prediction. To me, this is a 50-50 fight. I know my subscribers that are watching this, you're laughing at me. You're like, come on, Jacob's going to get fucked over. Some of you think this is a 2-round fight. I've seen people that I respect say that this fight ain't going 4 rounds. But, I'll hold my hands up. If Triple G destroys Jacobs, if he goes in there and just fucks him over like he did to Dominic Wade, I will hold my hands up and I will say Triple G, greatest fighter I've ever seen. I'm not even... I'll do that, but guys, it ain't happening. I don't see that happening. I think Danny Jacobs is a live underdog here. I think Triple G in this fight is going to be an uphill battle because of the judges and the referee and the size of Jacobs and whatnot. Guys, this is going to be a very hard fight for Triple G, and I think Triple G can win. I think he can win by knockout. He can't win by decision. Okay, fuck that. No chance of getting a decision against Jacobs. Not in Jacobs' hometown with American judges. If he does, I'll be surprised. Put it that way, unless he scores multiple knockdowns. Like if he dominates the fight and scores 2 knockdowns, then perhaps he'll get a split decision. But if he dominates the fight and scores 1 knockdown, it'll probably be a draw or a loss. Who knows? We saw what happened to Sergey. He dropped Andre Ward and schooled him behind a jab for 12 rounds. And then ended up losing a fucking unanimous decision. It was completely disgraceful. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with, I don't know, I'm gonna pick Triple G to win by a late knockout. If he doesn't hurt Danny Jacobs early, and if he's not able to pressure Danny Jacobs and get him into position, then the fight probably goes the distance and Danny Jacobs probably wins. But like I said, Danny Jacobs has the kind of power as does Triple G, to turn this fight around at any moment. Either guy has a puncher's chance. So, it's going to be a fantastic fight, very intriguing fight. I'm slightly favouring Golovkin, like I said. The more proven fighter, he can pressure Jacobs on the inside. Golovkin will have an advantage because he's got good inside skills. He knows how to work his way out of a clinch and things like that, and jostle for position inside with his head and whatnot. Triple G's quite cute on the inside. He's quite smooth. So, there's some subtleties and some little things that you don't always notice first time, but watching it again, you'll see little things that he does. So, yeah, Triple G can win this fight, and he can do so by knockout. But I just don't know, guys. It's a 50-50 fight. I'm going to make a prediction. Right now, I'm going to say Triple G by a late round stoppage, but between rounds 9 to 12. So, let me know what you guys think. I might even change my mind when the fight happens. Who knows? But let me know what you guys think. I know you guys think I'm fucking crazy, but this is just the way I see it. Thanks for watching.